Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's late night happy hour here at ESPN LA. I'm Brian Kamenetzky with Andy Kamenetzky, joined in our center rectangle today by Jason Concepcion. We are really excited to have you. We are have long been big fans of your work. Of course, the NBA Desktop, a couple podcasts over at The Ringer, The Connect, that's the new one with Shea Serrano, and of course, Binge
Yes.
Mode with Mallory Rubin. You're a busy man. And welcome. Thank
I
you.
hope so. I hope it appears that way.
I think it is. I mean, you can't fake a podcast. I listened to it. It
It's
was
true.
there.
Oh, we've tried. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. Thank you for being really excited too. It's really fun to finally meet you guys
Yes.
in a video format and a non-Twitter format.
It is weird how that happens. Like,
Yeah.
people like us who are, broadly speaking, part of, like NBA Twitter, for example, where there's like people that I'm not sure I've ever met before,
Oh,
but I know
yeah.
that I've had conversations with,
Yeah.
like, over the course of 5, maybe even like 10 years, like however long Twitter goes. And I'm not 100% sure I've ever met any of them. It's a weird thing.
It is a weird, very postmodern feeling that is a thing that I have experienced many times. It's weird. It's weird when you meet somebody. Remember meeting people like in the flesh, but when I would run into people that I know from online.
Wait, what are these flesh people
Remember
that you
that?
speak of? I don't know.
Remember that, folks?
Flesh humans.
And not knowing, like, do I address them by their name or by their tag, by their social media tag? Like, how do we do this? I remember when people would be like, "Oh, network." I'm like, "Don't do that. That's weird here in this place."
Like, do you find though that they're surprised if you actually tell them your name, like that they haven't bothered trying to figure it out?
No, not so much anymore. Maybe when I first started my Twitter account, perhaps, but not so much now. No.
Was it ever a secret? Like, were you one of the, did you try
It
to
was.
keep your name?
In the early Grantland days, it was my nom de plume was just network, because that's how my Twitter, it was my Twitter handle, and I was like obviously working other jobs and stuff at the time, while I was addicted to Twitter, and so it just felt somehow more comfortable to do that. But then eventually I did.
Well, I guess too, when you're sort of engaging with people almost entirely over social media, having that thing between, I would think that would be a lot more comforting, because it is a
For
horrible
sure.
place, social media. It can
For
be.
sure, and getting worse all the time. But originally it's a very interesting and weird thing that you can see in a numerical form how popular you are on a given medium. Like, you can see it
Yeah.
in a number, and so that does mess with you a little bit. Like, as I found that happening to me when my Twitter account first started taking off, being like, whoa, do I have to be careful now? Do I have to be different now? Like, this is weird.
Or like the idea too of, like, if you happen to notice the follower count goes down, it's like, all right, what did I do? Like, is this me? Is the problem them? Like, how much does it actually matter? Because in the beginning,
That's exactly right.
obviously. But, like, remember, because in the beginning, when all of us are figuring out what Twitter was, like, follower count was pretty much the only way that we could forget just validating what we're doing. Like, literally, it's just sort of like explaining what we were doing. Like, is anybody watching this? Does anybody care? Like, am I just screaming to the wind?
Absolutely correct. And what a weird thing that was. I mean, early Twitter it feels so innocent now compared to what Twitter is now. But it was, just trying to figure it out. It was weird that anybody would care. And then, so when people started to, it's just super strange to be like,
it's almost like
following me, why?
When you think back to, like, what Facebook was at the very beginning, where it was like, Brian Kamenetzky is, and you're like, feeling sad today, or like you fill in the blank, as opposed to, like, but as I tell my children, there is nothing more important than popularity, and so the thing with all this stuff that Andy's talking about, I mean, it is kind of the basis with how social media just sort of screws you. Like, it's Facebook. It's not so much how many friends you have, but it is everybody's best life, and all the, like, nobody puts their horrible stuff out there. It's all the good stuff.
of course, we're all curating our life. It's at the same time, like, it's interesting, coming from the generation that is like probably the last people that remembers life before the internet, or had a significant portion of their life before the internet. It is interesting now to consider, going from cradle to grave with these numbers attached to your name that really quantify something legitimate in your life, not only your raw popularity, but in some senses, like, certainly if you're going to work in media, if you have a great social media account, that's going to help you actually have a career. So it's just interesting, like, how these numbers that follow you now really affect your life. It's a weird thing.
Have you been able to do other ones? Because like Andy and I don't know if I think we're both a little too old and we just don't have the energy, and we can't quite keep our thumb on the pulse of what the kids do these days. But like, we tried like Instagram for like a day and couldn't do it, and like I don't have a TikTok account, which I think is probably good for everyone. But
I witness a lot of TikTok. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I've really learned in quarantine a lot about TikTok.
TikTok is a wild place.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, like her favorite TikToker, this girl Charlie, she's got like
Charlie D'Amelio.
Yes, she's got like 70 million followers or something according to Twitter. All I know about her is like 70 million followers. She does a lot of dances that my daughter's learned all of them.
That's what TikTok is. It's a dance. It's a dance platform.
Yes, yes. My life in quarantine is watching dances all day.
What was the pitch? What was the pitch like that for? Like, like when you go to the room to collect your VC money, is that the pitch? It's a dance platform?
No, I don't think. I don't think that anybody had it. I don't think the TikTok folks or the Vine folks or the Twitter folks had any idea like what it would be that would hook from their platform. Certainly TikTok is, at least conceptually, not incredibly different than Vine, which existed for a while. And but the fact that it is primarily a dance platform is a really interesting thing. If you can't dance, forget it. Don't.
Oh yeah, no.
Get on it.
And look, to her credit, she's actually become a really good dancer imitating these things. Like her dance skills from like March to almost late July, they've improved a lot. I mean, she's now become like this legit good dancer. I'm serious. You've seen some of these in the few.
I have seen some, only a couple because again I don't have an account. But no, it is good.
But like TikTok, what I've learned is that Charlie has like 70 million followers, which, by the way,
70 million is like that's like is that more people than like live in Belgium? Like that's
apparently it's. According to my daughter, it's more followers than TikTok has. According to her, I don't understand.
Like, I found a glitch in the system, folks.
I don't know either, but she says that Charlie has more followers than TikTok has, which maybe she just means like people who follow, like the equivalent of anybody who follows like the verified account for Twitter.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like high school popularity can now transfer internationally. Like that's how wild the society we live in now. It's a crazy thing. If you can't dance, forget it. I have a lot of comedian friends who have comedy TikToks, so I lurk for them, but it's like, forget it. I never post to it. Instagram, I do. I enjoy Instagram. I find it actually really relaxing if you train your algorithm enough. Like I have a lot of puppies, a lot of dogs, a lot of music and artists, and then I just go to my Discover page and I just scroll.
You go ahead, Andy.
I was just going to say, so it's more about what you're following to probably just cleanse yourself from Twitter than what you're actually posting.
Oh yeah. From Instagram. Well, Instagram's great because I find it a much more intimate way to keep in touch with a lot of my close friends back east, because there's a close friends feature on your Instagram stories that can allow you to curate who sees it, so you can. I keep in touch with people that way. And then my Discover feed is great. Like there's some of the musicians that you find on Instagram are I'm blown away by how talented they are. And then nothing can match the pet video content. It's a constant churn of pet video, and I love it.
Yeah, it's like that guy Paul Bronx on Twitter who just posts funny Slender animal
Sherbert.
videos. Yeah, Slender Sherbert. He's amazing. Like we need more of him. during these very trying
Love
times.
I love it.
Speaking of trying times, 15% off your first delivery at vsliquor.com if you put sports into the checkout. I learned from your podcast, Jason, you're not a huge drinker, but perhaps you know somebody who is, and you want to gift them something. This is a way for you to do it, and 15% off. You just go to vsliquor.com, put in sports in the checkout code, save 15%.
Get them some top shelf.
That's right. You said something on the inaugural episode of the Connect, which is a great show with you and Shea. It is hard. It is hard to come up with interesting concepts, particularly around movies and pop culture, that haven't been done. So explain. I guess before I ask you this thing, explain the show and how you guys came up with it, because it really is an interesting and very clever idea.
And it's more, the thing with. At least from my perspective, the thing with podcasts that really grabs people is more the relationship between the hosts and the relationship the audience has with the host. So the format often, as long as it can be something that like magnifies that relationship and allows people like a way in, it can be almost anything. And so, we talk about movies in the way that we like to talk about them, which is competing on really dumb categories, working Michelle Rodriguez into it, and then talking about what these movies, what kind of position they stake out in our personal lives. And then talking to each other about learning about each other's lives through this.
So you guys were sort of finding the common ground between Office Space and Scarface in the first episode.
Both stories about work friends. Yes, two different industries, but
different
it's
kinds of work friends. You mentioned though, so like how early you saw. Like I remember when Purple Rain came out, listening to Darling Nikki.
Oh Jesus!
And I was pretty sure I wasn't really sure what the song was about, but I knew I probably shouldn't be listening to it.
Yeah.
You saw a bunch of movies as a kid that were probably outside your age range.
100% I did.
What did that do for your shaping your pop culture?
It just leaves truthfully leaves an indelible mark on you. I think the three movies that I 100% should not have seen at a young age were Scarface. Honestly, was not that big a deal. Whenever I saw it, I was like 9 or 10 or whatever. It was violent, but it did not. And I thought the violence was amazing, and I didn't really understand the cocaine angle, but like I got Tony's vibe. The other one was Alien.
Yeah. A lot going on there.
Yeah, which absolutely terrified me, and I could not look away. And then the third one is John Boorman's Excalibur. Do you guys remember Excalibur?
Yes, vaguely. I don't think I've seen it since I was a kid.
John Boorman, British director.
He did Deliverance.
Known for his thrillers and for this like really like blown out, vivid color palette. Anyway, he did a retelling of Excalibur. Liam Neeson is in it, and it is like effed up. See that?
Yes. Well done.
It is messed up, and that was, I think, my favorite movie for a long time as a kid. I just watched that. We had it on VHS somehow. Like my parents had dubbed a bunch of VHS pirated movies, and so we had all these pirated movies, and Excalibur was one of them. I would watch that all the time. I loved that movie.
Was it because you were just really into movies, or did you like kind of feeling? Because I used to read books that were above my level because I could, not because I understood them. So were you just that into movies when you were a kid?
Yeah, I was just super, super into it. I was into TV and movies. It's like, again, like in the pre-internet age, you kind of crushing boredom was such a thing. You would just be so bored.
Yeah.
And it would felt oppressive. So the ability to like pop in a VHS and watch it for the 120th time actually was a boon. Even having cable TV, it's like, okay, I've seen all these movies. What else do we have? So I found a lot of respite in television and movies.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, because we're talking about De Palma with Scarface.
Oh, man.
Body Double. I remember was the movie.
Oh, yeah.
That was the movie. I remember. That's one of the early. I'm way too young to be watching this movie.
Aaron Allen.
But but it's and Melanie Griffith.
Yeah.
But it's constantly on cable. Like it was on cable 24/7.
That's one of the.
So I just and it clearly was above my understanding.
Right, but there was entirely too much nudity
Holly
to turn
Body.
it off.
Melanie Griffith as Holly Body.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, I'm just going to look. I think that there are legitimate porn stars in this movie too, which was a thing that had not really. Yes, here we go. Annette Haven, Sika, and others. Brian De Palma. This is the movie where I'm like, man, Brian De Palma has like some issues to work out, man. He's got some stuff going on.
Well, it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I decided I'm not entirely sure how great a director Brian De Palma is, but definitely has issues to work through. But like that, there were way too many boobies in that film for me to not watch it as a 9-year-old or 10-year-old.
He was going through. De Palma was going through something at that particular time. I think that's clear. But like,
I think
he's
been going through something at most times. Like, yes. I'm not sure there's ever been a time where De Palma wasn't going through something.
Really, really high highs, really low lows in his oeuvre. I mean, obviously, Body Heat, a weird one, but like Scarface.
Blowout's a good movie. I think Blowout with Travolta is a good movie.
That was one of the first movies where I really noticed like how it looked. There's that scene where Travolta has realized that all his tapes have been erased in his like, and the camera is spinning, and it just spins as he goes around and is pulling the tapes and is trying to figure out if there's one that hasn't been erased yet. That was the first time that I really noticed like a visual thing where I was like, oh, that's cool. How'd they do that?
So now when you guys came up with the theme of work friends, did you come up with the theme first, or were you just thinking like how did you go about deciding themes for these movies, and then sort of like how you wanted to anchor the show?
In a sense, I guess we just kind of thought about tropes that are pretty prevalent that include a bunch of movies that we like, which is how like Matthew McConaughey doesn't understand space. There's enough movies there in that particular genre. Work friends, merciless mentors. These are just like, just kind of categories that include a lot of movies. And so we would go about it that way. It's a fun thing to say. And also it does accurately describe a number of movies.
Yeah, it was interesting. One of the things, you guys go through all these different connections that exist, between Office Space and Scarface. Mm-hmm. One of the things, though, afterwards I was thinking about in terms of the connection with these two movies that I think is interesting is that both of them became so much more appreciated after the fact. Well, like Scarface was it did like modestly well. It wasn't a huge hit. It wasn't a flop, but it really didn't gain the currency that it has now until like decades later with hip hop and, like the references there. And Office Space was a straight up flop. I remember wanting to see that movie in theaters, not going opening weekend, and basically it was gone.
Yeah.
You missed your shot. And, like most people, seeing it on DVD and home video. And I thought it was interesting just how these two movies you guys chose both ended up really having this second life in pop culture.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to know, I went to music school, so I knew a lot of, and still know a lot of musicians, like professional musicians who tour and stuff. And for a while, the top three DVDs in any tour bus were The Big Lebowski, Office Space. There's like rock bands, obviously. Office Space, and then like it might have been Scarface, but like people, it's just a cult movie that you can watch again and again. That both have really funny, interesting things that you pick up as you go along. I remember Scarface, like it didn't really dawn on me that other people liked the movie until. I had this summer job working at a beach near where I grew up. And one of the couple year older guys was like, kept quoting it. and saying, doing the Tony Montana, you whores, basically, in the Tony Montana pronunciation. And it was only at that time that I realized that Tony Montana was saying that and not saying horse. I thought for my entire childhood, I thought that was just some kind of insult to call someone a horse.
like a Miami thing or a Cuban
right,
thing?
It must be a
maybe
Cuban
like a Miami
thing. Right.
like a Miami Coke guy thing. You're a horse. You're a farm animal.
So anytime you enter a room full or you go to a party with a bunch of Cuban people, are just like, don't call anybody a horse. Just don't. Stay away from horses.
It was only then at like 10th or 11th grade that I realized, because that was how young I was when I first saw that movie.
Scarface is kind of like the gangstery version, I think, in a lot of ways, to me at least, unless I'm missing something, of Caddyshack in a lot of where people love Caddyshack. And I'm convinced that about 75, 80, 90% of the people who love Caddyshack, quote it all the time, haven't actually seen it all the way through in probably 25 years.
Oh, that's probably true.
Because it's kind of, I mean, from start to end, if you watch it, it's a mess. I mean, it's not a particularly good movie, but it's got a lot of fun things to quote in it, and fun scenes and one-liners and all that. I haven't seen Scarface from beginning to end in a long time, in part because it's really goddamn long. Like
it's a long movie.
It's a very long movie. And,
it's interesting.
But it's got all those bits. Yeah, I was just going to say, it's got all these
so
little sections and bits and lines and tigers and all kinds. It's like, but I'm not sure how good a movie it is, but I don't think I care.
I think, well, it's grown as a Coke opera. It is, I think, a fantastic opus to crime. For me, I found like the arc of Scarface to be pretty coherent throughout on rewatch. I've seen it a million times, and then Office Space, conversely, was the one that I was like, this one feels like more like a bunch of scenes with, this kind of through line of Peter discovering himself and then realizing that he doesn't like work and then maybe committing a crime, like the hypnosis thing. It's there, and then it kind of goes away. Office Space was, I found, more a mess, but also just so charming as a snapshot of a moment in time, like the late 90s, when that kind of having a good job and being like, I don't like this, was like acceptable. You could just be like, I have a good job, but it's boring and I hate it. And I'm so sad to like look at that perspective from 2020. It's like, man, that looks pretty good.
You're in an office.
You don't like your job. Yeah, you could be brain dead doing it.
It's never really clear what he does. I mean, which kind of came at an era too. Like, remember Chandler on Friends has this office job that nobody really knows what he does, other than he clearly makes like a decent living, like you noted in the podcast. Like whatever Ron Livingston's character does, he's making a decent living. Like he's a young guy. Yeah, he's
gotta be
living
6
okay.
figures. Yeah, it's got to be pretty good. I was never a Friends guy, so I can't comment. But whatever he's doing,
he has a vague job. Like he's one of the only guys on the show with a job. It's established that Chandler has a job, but it's never really established what he does, other than he might crunch some numbers, but we don't really get what he's doing or who it's for. But it's kind of like Peter.
Let me ask you this: as friends people,
yes,
who was the breakout star of Friends when Friends was really the shit? Sorry, when Friends was really popping.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah.
Okay, on the guy side, though.
I would vote for either Matthew Perry or none of the above.
Right. I'm not sure. I mean, they all got rich.
They all did that.
But
and they've all had like interesting enough at times second lives, like Matt LeBlanc episodes, or isn't that what it's called?
Crushing it.
Yeah.
LeBlanc is probably doing the best of the
and
of the dudes.
Schwimmer ended up on The People versus OJ,
Crushing it.
and I think he's done some directing.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. Matthew Perry was the one that they were trying to make a movie star for a while.
He did that movie. It's been a journey for him. Yeah,
right. But he hasn't really, and he did. Was he the one that did the Not 30 Rock show? The other one?
Oh, Sunset Strip.
Wasn't he on that? Am I correct? I may be wrong.
Yes.
What was it called? Something.
Something and the who's its and the whatnots.
This is great content. 77 Sunset Strip? No?
Nothing
Something
says
like that.
great web programming like three guys Googling things at the same
I
time.
love it. I love it. Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
Yeah, I thought he was
That
on
was but that was Sorkin's first.
That was the Sorkin one.
That was his first one, right? That it only lasted a season.
Right, me at the West Wing. Sorkin had the West Wing.
Yeah, he had
that was
Sports Night
before that.
too.
No, what was the one that came? That this was the precursor for then. Oh, right, 2006 and 2007.
Wait, what got you wondering about that though, Jason? In terms of the breakout male star of Friends?
Because it's Friends has become such a weird cultural object in that it's a show that seems to comfort people, and so they watch it again and again on streaming platforms, and it's found a whole new audience on streaming platforms to such an extent that like getting the cast together again and having them together again in one place is like a big deal. And it just seems to me, other than Aniston, who I think is like underrated, it's like in Office Space, I was like, man, she's great. So funny. Really
she is great.
But then the guys never really popped.
No.
None of the dudes really popped off.
I will say, but I know there's a lot of re-examining of what that show is and what it was and why it was popular and the problems with it, and they're all pretty legitimate. But particularly for that sitcom, multi-camera thing, it was a really well done show. It was really funny. It was just funny, and so I think when you watch it, it is kind of comforting. It's easy to laugh at. It was easier to laugh at 5 years ago before you look at it a little bit side-eyed now. But I think that's part of it. It's very comforting, particularly to my people. We just like it. It's like milk.
For some reason I just missed on that whole era. Although I remember seeing some of the bigger bottle episodes. Am I wrong? I remember seeing the Tarantino episode, and I remember seeing the episode where Brad Pitt was on for a little while. Is that
he plays Aniston's ex? I think that's what it was. He's Aniston, which the in joke was, of course, at the time they were either dating or married. Right.
Perfect.
Hilarity.
It's amazing, and so I remember that. But other than that, I was not. It's just a thing, a huge part of American culture that I completely missed for whatever reason.
It's a weird thing. I would say that you both miss something and miss nothing, at the same time. It's well done, but your life will go on totally fine having never seen it. As opposed to other things where if you miss it in pop culture, it's you know what, you really ought to see that.
Well, what? This is a great conversation.
Okay, it's a generic answer, but The Wire, you should see The Wire. That's well done to the point where you should actually watch that. I would say you're missing out if you have not seen that. Or
my wife's not a huge movie person, and I don't think she would be offended that I say it. She's never seen Butch Cassidy. I think if you're somebody who claims to like movies, you should see Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Have you never seen Butch Cassidy? You're holding up a finger, you may have never.
No,
seen
I've seen it. I've seen it.
I was going to say, okay. I was that would be weird to me.
I think it's a fun movie. I think some of it just doesn't hold up. The bicycle scene not holding up.
The bicycle scene is not great. I don't love it.
The rest of it is great.
I like the bicycle scene.
And the chemistry between
Redford and Newman
is amazing.
Actually, the chemistry between Newman and Redford separately with Catherine Ross is also really
Catherine
good.
Ross crushing it. Crushing it.
She's amazing because she's really only known for these 2 or 3 iconic
The Graduate,
movies.
Butch Cassidy, and there's one more that I'm
right.
Not,
but it's my understanding that she walked away from all of this. Like, it just wasn't like her thing.
Godspeed to her.
And now she's just best known for being with Sam Elliott.
Crushing it.
For like 50
what
years
life.
or whatever it's been.
What an amazing life. Getting to
Stepford
wake up every
Wives.
morning.
That was the third one.
Good morning.
Stepford
I can't
Wives.
do it. I can't get down there.
I'd feel extremely... If I woke up every morning with Sam Elliott, I'd feel incredibly safe. Like, I really would.
I feel like during the pandemic, they should just pass him around. Like, everybody should have a day where they wake up with Sam Elliott.
You remember to order toilet paper? I can't do it. But imagine him just saying stuff that you get to experience that. Just normal Sam Elliott. Have you seen the remote, honey? Like whatever it is that people say it. Yeah. That must be so great.
That would be unbelievable. The other thing that your podcast got me thinking about with
Going to
work,
pick up
like
sandwiches.
the workplace.
Do you want turkey?
Say it again, Sam. It's incredible.
Orange juice. I was thinking about like Al Pacino as like an actual work friend. Like what it would be like if Al, like not in anything we've seen.
Real life Al Pacino.
Like if Al Pacino was, because I kept thinking about all the movies that he's been in where he's been in a work setting, and he's incredibly intense and seems extremely difficult to work with, whether he's playing a cop, whether he's Michael Corleone, whether he's playing Mike Wallace, like all of the movies that he's in a work setting, he's difficult. So it got me thinking about, like, is this how Al Pacino just views the workplace? Because he's never really had a job, probably going back to like the 60s, that wasn't like a theater or movie set.
It's interesting. I think that, I don't know if he'd be hard to work with. I certainly think that you have to like break it down into the two, like the quiet and then the yelling eras of Al Pacino. But I think he seemed like I certainly in The Godfather, you're not going to get a lot of information about what's happening, about his personal thought process.
But you understand, gossip is what you're saying.
You're not going to be like, Mike, why are you doing that? Like, what's that about? He's not going to explain it to you, but you understand that the family is in good hands. So that's a comfort.
Monty _10 on the Periscope just said, imagine Al Pacino in the office or in office space.
Well, which Al Pacino? Are we just Son of a Woman Al Pacino, Cruising Al Pacino, Scarface Al Pacino, Godfather 1 or 2 Al Pacino?
Godfather 3 Al Pacino.
Godfather, ooh.
There is a world somewhere where Michael Scott is played, like on Earth 4, Carell chose to play Michael Scott like Son of a Woman Pacino. Like that exists somewhere, and I kind of want to see it.
Oh, man.
It doesn't totally not fit. You understand? Like I feel like it kind of fits.
My friend, comedian Zach Toscani, my dear friend, has a joke where he talks about how his dad would take him to movies when he was a kid. And one of the movies they went to see when he was too young to see it was Son of a Woman. And he left throughout the entire movie. He was like, well, what is it? What is the scent? And he left. And on the way out, he was just like, so what was it, Dad? What was the scent?
This is like his rosebud or something, trying to figure out what this scent, this mythical scent of, I guess, Gabrielle Anwar. Like he's trying to figure out what Gabrielle Anwar smells like.
So what is it? What's this? Dad, what did it? That was pointless. What's the scent? We never figured it out.
Al Pacino getting in Dwight's face about everything. What? But
it's funny, but Andy and I, we were doing it for a little while for The Athletic. We were, when there was no basketball, we just converted our Lakers podcast into a movie podcast. And one of the first ones that we did was Any Given Sunday, which is another movie that
another workplace where he's kind of difficult.
He is a little bit challenging.
Well, I think that's if you are his superior, because he's got a way of doing things, folks, and he's going to do it his way. But But I think you'll find if you play for him and if you are dedicated to getting that inch, you will find yourself supported.
Tell that to Willie Beeman. Tell that to Willie Beeman.
Willie Beeman, I think he and Willie they helped each other.
Took quite a while.
It did.
It
didn't take quite a while. It took like 2.5 weeks. That was the other thing about that movie. Is the timeline of that film
screen time. You're right.
The timeline of that film makes absolutely no sense. Like I thought, this must be week 2, and by week 16, they're going to be in the playoffs. No, it's like week 11. He takes over, and he takes over that game. He sucks. But by the playoffs, he's amazing. What the hell is going on here?
I don't know if this is
incredible.
a take. I don't know if this is a take, but I think I think Lawrence Taylor in that movie is one of the best performances by an athlete.
He's terrific
in a movie. That's a real performance. Yes, he's obviously playing a character who has a very similar career trajectory, position, role within the football team as himself, but he's raw in that.
Oh, he's really good. It was interesting. We did a look at that movie with Ethan Strauss, and it was like I saw that movie recently for a book project that I was actually trying to get off the ground a couple of years ago that didn't end up happening. But it was the first time that I saw. I know. We should ask Shea. We should ask Shea how that's going. That whole book route's going pretty bad for that guy.
He's doing okay with it.
He's the last one, though. As far as I know, he's the last author on Earth.
Yeah, I actually got his book.
He's doing pretty good with it.
But it was the first time I had seen Any Given Sunday start to finish, probably since I saw it in the theater. And I came to realize that it was actually better than I thought it was in the moment then. And also that I think I had lumped in so much of Pacino's 2 to 3 years previous hoo-ha, 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 that I sort of saw everything he was doing that way. And you watch Pacino in this movie, he's way more subtle than I gave him credit for.
Oh yeah, he hardly ever yells in this movie.
No, and the movie actually is so far ahead of the discussion about football. It gets into stuff the health and the way these players are getting used. It gets into the relationship, the often, sort of problematic faux paternalistic relationship between white coaches and black players, the way black quarterbacks are dealt with. In ways this was never talked about in 1999.
That's
it was
true.
Way ahead of its time.
That's true, but wouldn't you agree that a movie wouldn't you agree that even there's almost no way to do? For instance, I would say that North Dallas 40 had those similar themes, touched on those similar themes in terms of players taking injections to go out there and continue to play, health of the players, the way the coach treats them and the way the team kind of throws them away, the economic relationship between the players and the coaches. I thought that movie, for instance, had a lot of those themes as well. I think it's interesting that, that fiction has kind of been able to depict the sport in such a raw and kind of unvarnished way compared to how the sport mythologizes itself. I just think that giving it up for football was such an intrinsic part of the experience of what the idea that these guys are giving it up for you. And that is so, and it was glorified, but not necessarily acknowledged.
Well, I think part of it is there's no other sport where the gap between the imagery that the league sells versus what the actual sport is bigger and more obvious than football. It's nobody. I mean, are there seedy sides of baseball? Baseball players can walk when they're 70. It's not that bad. And so, but football, it's so painfully obvious. They're not. We chew up and spit these people out. We can ignore it, but it's there. And so, so things like Any Given Sunday, or what was it, Ballers?
Yes. Oh man, Ballers.
What was the one that ESPN banned?
Playmakers.
Playmakers. Yes.
That's what I was thinking of. shows like that, even when they're over the top, like Any Given Sunday is kind of absurd with the lightning strikes and all the things happening at once. It's like a Steve Ballmer. It's like a timeout at a Steve Ballmer game.
There's this scene where a character fumbles, and all of a sudden it goes to like a screen that looks like the three of us. You know, like it's a tri-split or whatever, three squares where you see Pacino on one side and then Cameron Diaz on the other side. She's the owner of the team.
Yes.
And they're both screaming, and it starts spinning just for like no reason. It's insane.
The scene where they let the alligator loose in the shower is the fourth most unrealistic thing just in that scene. Like there are things that are way over the top than that.
Well, you know, like post JFK, Oliver Stone has just been on one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's really just been on one.
One.
And I think that Any Given Sunday is emblematic of that. Like, there's just the visual flourishes. It's such a trippy movie and so disorienting at times. Even the way that action is shot, which somehow works. You know, it
does.
It's a lot of these like whip pans and quick cuts, and then like photo burn and all these different effects and stuff. It is a very disorienting film, but I think purposely so. And. Is just a weird thing. I mean, Stone's directorial style, again, post JFK, has just been wacky.
Oh yeah, God,
it's a lot going on.
What is that? The name of the drug movie he did with Travolta and Benicio del Toro is Savages. Savages.
I don't think Travolta is. Is he in that as like the lawyer? Benicio del Toro
back
is
to the
in that.
Google. Hold on.
Here we go.
While you look that up, I know we also wanted to talk to you about NBA Desktop and the latest one
let's talk about it.
With the bubble, which is A, awesome, B, we'd love to show clips. I don't think we can because I'm pretty confident we'd be fired. Like on the spot, I'm pretty confident we cannot show clips.
That came from one of them Bill websites, didn't it?
Well, I think, and then there's larger corporate, I think, structural issues right here.
It's on many levels. There's problems with showing this, but for people who have not seen it, it's how would you describe it? I want to make sure to do it justice.
It is a short musical using Disney songs from their famous movies that tells a story about basketball coming back from the perspectives of fans, from the commissioner, from LeBron, and from the media.
And various Disney characters.
Yes, as sung by Disney.
John Travolta plays Dennis in Savages.
Right, he's like the lawyer in that.
Yes, yeah.
Taylor Kitsch, one of another chance at trying to make Taylor Kitsch a movie star, which didn't kind of work. Yeah. Although I like Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Oh my God, though, he's handsome.
Aaron Taylor Johnson, extremely handsome, as is Taylor Kitsch.
That's what I was talking. I was looking at a picture of Taylor Kitsch. Yeah. Have you been taking in the now that it's started again? Have you been taking in the scrimmages that everybody's going crazy for and all that?
I watched the Wizards last night. I watched today. I got around the blackout, the TV blackout, in a method that I will not describe here, to watch the Lakers scrimmage versus the Mavericks. It's just, it's a complex and multi-layered feeling. On the one hand, it is great. It feels good to see basketball and see LeBron James going up and down the court. It feels good. At the same time, it is weird that it is happening like this in this time with all the other stuff going on. But it felt good to watch it for an hour and a half today.
Well, that's actually one of the things that I think really works so well about the latest desktop is that you capture both. It's exciting for this to be back, and like you wouldn't bother doing this if you weren't excited by the prospect of it being back. And as funny as it is, though, the way you guys present it with all the different Disney characters and the parody of all those famous songs, like Frozen and Aladdin and all that. There's also, too, the acknowledgement of we are doing this in the middle of a pandemic with numbers spiking, as you point out, like these cases, and just, it's going to be okay as long as we're all in the bubble. Like, showing both sides of that, like, is there a side that you come down on in terms of like, should we be doing this? Is it okay to be doing it?
I think that sometimes I think that there is not a clear-cut answer, but that it is important to continue to ask the question. And I think this is one of those cases. Is it the right thing to do? Is there some formulation is there some way to kind of calculate the good done by knowing the amount of players that espouse certain causes or the platforms it gives players to talk about issues? And I don't know. It's just it is a strange thing. On the one hand, I think that people can multitask. I think it's absolutely reasonable to say, okay, here is a sports game that is on, and at the same time, I can continue to support causes and be aware of things that are happening in the wider world around me. And at the same time, time is a finite resource. There are only so many minutes in the day, and now you're spending it doing this. And the reasons for doing this, is it right? Is it right to be doing this in a state where numbers, as we all see, are spiking? What does it mean that a certain segment of people are selected to have tests on a really rapid and seemingly daily basis?
Right.
While, half a mile outside the perimeter of this building, it is a much different story. These are deep, like moral and philosophical questions that I think the answer to those things is shifting, and I think all the time. And so therefore it is important to continue to say all the time, is this good? Is this right? What's happening? And to just keep asking that question, whether you come down on either side of it or not at that particular time.
Well, there's an interesting double question in there, because like you could ask the idea of, is it responsible to be doing sports at all? At this sort of scale. But then the flip side is, if you're going to do them at all, you have to do them the most responsible way possible. And
right.
And the way the NBA is doing this, for example, is I think about as responsible as you can go about doing it in terms of the way the actual bubble is functioning.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that from interviews that I've read and profiles and pieces that I've read with experts quoted, it seems like that that there's a lot to laud in terms of the NBA's approach given the situation at hand. I think the thing that I keep thinking about is, we were talking about social media before and how weird it is to be a person in this world and have actual numbers that you can attach to how popular you are in the world, how, and understand in a quantifiable way, like how many people are aware of you. And I think that when I think about the NBA, what you're seeing is a business that is highly valued because it generates a lot of money, with employees that are highly valued and therefore are given access to testing and resources and protected in a certain way. And that is kind of the theme of like what is happening right now and in the wider world, and certainly in the United States. And so like the thing that I keep thinking about is like, where is the line? Okay, the line is, if you work for a business like the NBA, you can have access to all these testing and but what happens if that moves, and where is that line? And that's the thing that I think about a lot now. The
NBA very clearly was trying to avoid, I think, some of what you're talking about there, where like the perception would be that they're getting stuff that, and so like a month and a half ago, when they're like, all right, end of July, we're going to do this, is because they looked at the news and the curve was flattening and it seemed okay in Florida and all this other stuff. And in the meantime, and I think the result of that has become like they kind of stopped pretending that it's about anything other than everybody wants to play because A, we're competitive, B, we care about basketball, but C, there's like $1 billion at stake here. Like this is important financially for what we do, and like morally you can agree, you can question whether or not that's a good enough reason to do it. But like they've stopped sort of trying
Sure.
to dance around it and have gotten pretty, I think, open about like that's part of the reason we're doing this is we need to like the health of the league needs it.
I agree with that. I do think that, I think that they still will say, you still see interviews and stories where it's like, oh, and national unity,
right,
et cetera, some sort of wording around that, which is, come on, that's not really it. It's because
our
this
service
is
to America.
Right. This is because this is a huge business that a lot of people depend on, and that if it was not to resume at this particular time, it would be catastrophic for the numbers.
Right.
Like that's why we're doing it. But I do think, it has been acknowledged, although maybe not in the exact kind of ratio that is the actual formulation for why everything has come back.
But you talked about the racial justice focus and the questions about. Andy and I were sitting on the Lakers post scrimmage media availability. It was 15 minutes of LeBron talking about very eloquently about racial issues and Breonna Taylor and all this. Anthony Davis follows up and basically does the same thing, and then we asked the same questions of Frank Vogel. So it was about 35 minutes where no basketball questions were really asked, and the thing that stuck out to me, because there was that question of whether or not this would be a distraction. It's not, because quite frankly, I think reporters are a little bit scared to try to change this. It is incredibly awkward when players
especially
are focused
over
on this.
Zoom. Especially when half these
You
reporters
can't
are
see
over
them.
Zoom.
You can't pull them off to the side. It's like, yeah, this is great, you talking about Breonna Taylor and all, but I really want to discuss your high pick and roll in this scrimmage in the second quarter. Like, it's
weird plot twist in the middle of a Zoom call.
It's impossible. So, like the guys who want to keep the focus on this are going to be able to keep the focus on this. It's absolutely going to be that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a net good. There's no question about it. And I think that while I have criticized some of like the accepted slogans, the uniform slogans, and
it opens up a weird can of worms in terms of what can be said, what can't be said, and why certain things can or can't be said.
We can't ignore like that a lot of the people that own these teams in, whether it be NBA, MLB, NFL, are fairly conservative and have views that probably don't align with social justice. And I think we've seen that with Atlanta's an NBA team and Kelly Loeffler. But like, I do think that the players have been really, really good. There's that clip of Tobias Harris and other players just saying, arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. That's all I have to say. And I think that keeping that message out there is a net good. That's been really positive, and it's just really important. It feels like it'll be interesting to see, and I hope it doesn't happen that like this feeling fades. That I hope those kind of messages keep being put out there, and it's been great to see it happen.
This is actually where I thought that, as much as we know the overarching reason that the league is returning, which is the health of the league and the viability of it, we have no idea if there's even going to be a 2021 season. So they have to try to finish what they can and, reap as much of the fortune as they can. But a big reason that I actually thought that starting the season again could be useful in terms of maintaining that focus on these different social issues is because our natural inclination is to forget things anyway. Like it's pretty damn amazing that as a nation and even like worldwide, we've managed to stay this collectively focused on it. And I think some of it has to do with, the pandemic and a lot of people being away from their jobs, kids being out of school, things like that. But we don't typically stay focused on anything this long. And at some point, there's going to be that natural inclination, especially when there's all these different forces trying to reopen the country again and trying to move us away from this state where we can stay more, I think, naturally focused on it. You've got these different players dictating conversation. And, in a typical post game or typical post practice, They're saying, no, I'm not going to answer some question about defensive coverages. I'm going to say Breonna Taylor's name and that these cops need to be arrested. And I think this is a really interesting opportunity for them to basically keep the conversation on their terms. And you wouldn't have this opportunity if the league didn't start again. Whether they can keep it going, who knows? I mean, and at some point they are going to discuss basketball more, because when the games actually matter, they're going to answer more basketball questions.
I guess I would say, I agree with that. I think, to me, part of the thing that I don't love often about these kind of conversations around sports is it's, we want to know what LeBron thinks, we want to know what Anthony Davis thinks, and at the same time, the people who own the teams who can make calls that affect real structural things, both within the league and in the wider economy. The DeVos family, Betsy DeVos is the Secretary of Education. The DeVos family owns the Orlando Magic.
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada more. There's tons of examples like that. Hearing very little from them. We never hear from the people who can really push the levers. And I think it's good that players are using that platform. It's a must. It's absolutely necessary. At the same time, I think a lot of people who should be on the record about things hide in the kind of spotlight that is thrust upon the players that play for their teams.
Well, what do you think? How do you think, the dynamic, for example, with San Antonio, I think is a fascinating one, just because, Pop is as outspoken as any person is on any of these things, and their own, the whole family is very conservative. They're owned by, they're noted Republicans, noted Trump supporters, but there's clearly no indication that they put any kind of pressure on people inside the organization to not say certain things. So what do you think is the dynamic there? Because there may have been an era where that kind of frank talk from an employee wouldn't be tolerated. I don't know, but it's complicated. I agree with you.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine what it would be. I'm sure it's fairly uncomfortable at times. It has to be. It can't not be. But again, I think at the same time, it's kind of emblematic of a lot of the things that are happening in that. Yeah. The people that can really affect change in a real way, often we don't hear from them other than when we read a news story about some. It's
such a weird contrast between this stuff, which is so incredibly important, and the incredible joy that you get out of seeing Bobby and Toby reunited, however briefly, outside the balcony. I want both of those things, and they are so strange next to each other that it's really hard to get past. With all these sports,
I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think that finding, to get back to just talking about my project once again, NBA Desktop. But I think the thing that's what we try to get.
Emmy award winning, by the way. It was
pointed out.
I was reminded in the Periscope to point that out.
So the Disney thing came about. Jason Gallagher, who is director of NBA Desktop, we created it together. Was we should do a Disney musical, and we were great idea. So we got together about a week before it came out and picked the songs and then wrote the lyrics. We kind of split them up, and then had Isaac Lee produce. He's the voice on Make a Man Out of You and A Whole New World, and has sung on a bunch of other stuff we've done. And we got Sarah Lynn Robinson, who has sung for us before, as one of Jason's friends. And then we just put that together. And what we were trying to capture is that thing of we're celebrating this. It's great. At the same time, I have a lot of qualms. I have a lot of questions about whether this is the right thing to do, what are the larger issues at play, but also I love it when guys dunk.
We want
both. What it comes down to.
we want a perfect version of this, because I think in part none of us want to see regular people not have the access to testing that they need. Nobody wants to see the country, in part, get dragged down.
Sure.
If, say, there isn't enough testing for this.
Sure.
But I think also, too, none of us want to feel guilty for watching the basketball and enjoy it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't want to feel bad about enjoying this. So you want it to feel like as perfect setting as possible. So in some ways, you can alleviate yourself of your own guilt.
Yeah, I think that is a clear reason for sports and entertainment existing, like in general, is to like kind of like get your mind on all this stuff. At the same time, like I do think that particularly now, when a lot of our issues are so communal, you know, and the power of any one person to kind of like affect the entire structural thing is really limited. Like, you know, stay inside, wear a mask when you go out because that's going to affect other people, and all these thinking about the way we spend money and what companies we give money to. I think that, you know, a lot of the experience of being alive right now, at least for me, is trying to like discern what my culpability is in all the things that are happening all around me all the time, and how with any small gesture I can hopefully move the needle in a minuscule fashion towards the right direction.
One of the things in watching the desktop, these are all songs that I hear a lot. You know, the actual versions of it, particularly Frozen, but Aladdin, all these others, because I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and you know, you guys used a lot of the Disney princess movies, and that's really in her wheelhouse. Yeah, those are some earworm songs, man.
Oh, they know what they're doing. Like, Disney knows what it's doing. Like, that's, you know, there's a reason that they're a behemoth, that they know how to do this. You know, they get the best people to write songs that are extremely catchy, and they just stick in your mind.
But like, how much did that become a factor for you as you're trying to parody them? Like, because I'm sure you have to like master these songs, like, and really like listen to the ins and outs of them. Like, let it, for example, like, you know, Let It Go for the First Time Forever. Like, that song stays with you, man.
Oh, for sure. Well, I think that one of the areas that Jason and I share and that makes the creative partnership so fruitful is we really do both enjoy musicals. Like Jason has written a musical, a basketball-themed musical before, and is just generally a fan of musical theater. Jason Gallagher?
No, which one did he write?
I forget what the name of it is, but it's on Spotify.
Okay.
And so that is just a thing. Yeah, you'll find it. And that's just kind of like a interest that we share, and I enjoy musicals as well.
Okay.
And so marrying like the kind of emotional beats to the emotional beats of the song is important, and it is part of that is just like our knowledge and love of the genre.
All right, I was in musicals in high school. Andy was in musicals in high school. I have never really been able to get past. I was in Godspell, Fiddler on the Roof,
some hippie stuff.
Literally everything I know about the Bible is that script. Yeah. That's all I know. And I'm Jewish, and I don't know any Old Testament. All I know is Gospel according to Matthew. So I did that. I did Fiddler on the Roof. Junior year was West Side Story, and then Cabaret.
You have a live band?
Yeah.
Man,
and I got
West Side Story is hard.
Particularly the way we did it. I think we made it harder. But like, I've never been able to like. West Side Story is a perfect example. The music is beautiful. I mean, it is genuinely beautiful music, but it just feels silly. Like when at these moments of incredible tension, these two rival gangs are going to have a dance off. It's very TikTok.
Yeah, there's a level of silliness certainly, and weirdness and corniness, I think, to any musical.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the same time, I like a good song, simply. And even if I find, like we did Little Abner when I was in high school, and Grease.
So did I. I was in Little Abner.
Oklahoma. Little Abner sucks.
Yes, it does.
It really absolutely.
I played Evil.
Little Abner, absolutely garbage. Some of the worst. Jebediah T. Cornpone is the only one that I remember. Terrible. But, there's something memorable about every musical, and I just like a good musical song. Like even if I find the underlying message or the scene or the thing being played out pretty corny, the fact that the message of it is so kind of front and center makes for a great song sometimes. Like A Whole New World is a heartbreaking song, a beautiful song.
Oh, I mean, the songs that they, especially in sort of this rebirth, there was this sort of dormant period for Disney in the
Sure.
animated musicals, and then around Aladdin and Little Mermaid is where things started really taking off again, and then they truly found their footing. But like, I'm not gonna lie, there have been a couple times where like I think about my daughter growing up or whatever, and I start hearing like, "Do you want to build a snowman?"
Yeah, oh man,
like I start welling up a bit. Like it starts getting kind of emotional, and is that silly? I guess.
No, it's not. Come on, like this is the reason these things are timeless. The reason people are still talking about Beauty and the Beast, and even Frozen or Moana, like that are more recent, or Mulan, is because, in large part, these songs are so evocative and do generate a real feeling in you, in your body, in your heart. Like Disney's just good at doing that. They know what to do.
They're good at so many things. I mean, and I don't say this just because we work there, but it's like, you go to one of their parks and then you go to somebody else's park and like you get it.
We don't say it just because they're monitoring us right now as we speak.
Just because literally there is a person sitting just off camera to my left, making sure I do this correctly. But like you go to one of their parks,
I'm 100%
and they get, like,
sure the gun's loaded,
and like okay, there's a reason they can charge $140 to get into this place for 8 hours. Like it's
even that. Listen, I am not the people that love Disney, man. That is a wild subculture.
It is.
It's very cool.
We have a cousin who's that person,
and especially now that streaming, that video streaming has become such a part of. It's been popular for several years, but now that we're all home and people are watching more Twitch, more YouTube videos, etc., really seeing the Disney content, of the streaming Disney content, of individual content creators that love Disney and know so much about it, it is a wild thing, man. It is wild.
Have you done a deep dive into Disney Plus?
I love Disney Plus. I think it's I'm a big Marvel movies fan. I'm a big Star Wars fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of all the Disney musicals, as I've said. So there's, I love The Mandalorian. Like there's just like a lot there. When Hamilton came out, I couldn't wait.
Hamilton was great.
Yeah, I couldn't wait.
I missed it. I didn't see it.
Watch it.
I know everybody said I'm not anti-Hamilton. I just haven't done it. I'm not anti-Sopranos. I've never seen that either. It's the giant hole in my pop culture.
It's interesting, Jason, when you said that, to some degree, all musicals are corny, which I think you're correct.
Yeah.
Like it got me thinking about Hamilton, because I was like, okay, Hamilton feels like about as non-corny as you can get for a musical, but it's also new. And it just got me wondering, okay, over 30 years, 20 to 30 years from now, assuming there's still a planet, is Hamilton still going to feel like trenchant and urgent? It probably won't be considered groundbreaking.
I think so. I think it'll be considered, it is still early, but I do think it'll be considered one of the best ever. I think that there's a level of corniness even to that too.
Real quick,
rapping about laws and stuff is corny, but as I was trying to explain to a friend of mine who was like, this seems so corny when Lynn starts rapping, I cringe, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, and I think the thing that I would say is there is really something so subversive and powerful about seeing the founding fathers depicted by people of color. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
It is so much of the impact of that musical is that. And listen, as I've again told many people I know, before I saw Hamilton, I was lucky enough to see it when it was here, though. I saw it at the Pantages.
Right.
before that, I was like, how good is it? This probably sucks. Right? It's like so many weird, like Goodell goes all the time.
Got about 7 seconds.
It's gotta suck. And then I saw it. It was great. I love it.
Jason Concepcion, NBA Desktop, The Connect, and Binge Mode at The Ringer. Thank you so much for doing this.
This was awesome.
This was
Thank you.
Really fun. We had a great time.
Wonderful to be here, and great to make your acquaintances through a screen
for the first time. So that's cool.
Yeah.